Nobody's perfect. You live and you learn it. All right, we gonna let YouTube send out that notification. Looks like it sent it out. Wait for some people to jump up in here, and then we gonna get this started, man. We got some MrBallen. We fly, no lie. You know this, ballin'. Yo, 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 what's up, what's up? What up, Stewie? What up, Rolling Church? What's up, y'all? I hope y'all day is going good. Y'all night. Shout out to everybody in the chat kicking it with me. What up, Amber? We got some MrBallen for you guys today, man. It's been a while since I uploaded a video. It's been a week, actually. But I got new videos coming. Got some Tom McDonald and some other stuff. Some new videos that I kind of want to take the channel in a direction because I'm very opinionated. Hell yeah. Shout out to Houston, man. But yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We chilling, man. We got some MrBallen. We'll probably be here for an hour, so grab something, you know, sip something, smoke something, eat something. We chilling, man. Y'all know the vibes. We got MrBallen, the real story of the undead army. Let's jump up in it, y'all.
If there is one war story that everybody needs to hear at least once, it is the crazy story of how this small group of Russian soldiers during World War I defended Osovich Fortress in Poland. It is both absolutely horrific and utterly inspiring, and I guarantee you it's nothing like any other war story you've ever heard. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's house, take all their fresh eggs out of the fridge, hard boil them, and then put them back. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the morning of August 3rd, 1915, during World War I, a 21-year-old Russian soldier named Vladimir Kotlinsky looked out from behind the huge stone walls of Osovich Fortress in Poland. Out in front of him, he saw the same landscape he had been looking at for the last 6 months that he had been stationed at this fortress. It was a big, swampy forest that surrounded them on all sides. Additionally, in this swampy forest around them on all sides were dozens and dozens of trenches. Trenches are long, deep pits that soldiers will dig to both hide inside of when they're being attacked, and then also to launch their own attacks out of from behind their dirt walls. And these...
It's crazy. Back in the day, they really just, like, was chilling in those things, you know? Like, one grenade come in there, it was a wrap for everybody. Everybody going to the upper room, like...
Trenches that zigged and zagged all around Osovich Fortress were created by and now occupied by 7,000 German soldiers. And during World War I, the Russians were fighting the Germans. The Germans really wanted to take Osovich Fortress from the Russians. It was in a great strategic position with a railway passing right through it. There was also a river nearby and a main road, meaning whoever owned this fortress was greatly aided in moving critical wartime supplies and troops in a very hotly contested area. But despite the repeated attempts by these 7,000 Germans to take over Osovich Fortress over the past 6 months, they had all been repelled by Vladimir and the puny 900-man Russian force inside of the fortress. And so, by that morning, August 3rd, 1915, as Vladimir is looking out from the battlements over the trenches in the marsh down below, it was like both the Russians and the Germans had reached a sort of stalemate, where neither side was trying to attack the other, and neither side was leaving. They were just kind of staying put and doing nothing. In fact, over the last few weeks, there had been so little action from either side that the Russian soldiers inside the fortress got so bored, they began sneaking out the side door of the fortress to try to catch fish with their bare hands in the nearby river. But this morning, as Vladimir stood atop the wall, he noticed something strange happening in one of the trenches that was located closest to the fortress. It was still several hundred feet away, but he could see clearly down into this trench. And what he saw was there was this cluster of high-ranking German officers that were kind of huddled together, and they kept looking down at the ground at something inside of the trench that Vladimir couldn't see, and then they would look up at the sky and kind of wave their hands around, and then they'd look back down at the ground below them. Now, Vladimir had no idea what they were doing. I mean, again, he could not see what they were looking at in the trench, and when he looked up into the sky where they seemed to be looking, it just looked like a regular blue sky. But whatever they were doing, it was making Vladimir feel nervous. Vladimir was a young junior officer, which meant he was in charge of other soldiers, but because he was so new, he lacked experience and credibility, and so really wasn't considered a serious leader within the army. And so, Vladimir, as he's watching this strange behavior, was concerned that if he left now and told his superiors that he was worried about the Germans because they were looking at the sky funny and looking at the ground funny, that it would make him look like he was being paranoid and not a good leader. And so ultimately, Vladimir just looked at this cluster inside of the trench and decided, you know what, they're not shooting at us, there's no attack happening, so whatever they're doing, it can't be that big of a deal. And lately, no one's done anything, so why would that change now? And so Vladimir left the walls of Osovich Fortress and went down below to hang out with his friends.
Not I.
3 days later, at 4 in the morning, the Russian soldiers who were up along...
Call me paranoid or whatever, man, but I would have stayed up there looking just like a hawk, bro. Like a hawk. Like, what's going on, man? What do y'all see that I don't see? What do y'all know that I don't know? I gots to watch. I can't, like, you know, I'm not leaving. I gots to watch.
The Osovich Fortress walls, keeping watch that night, noticed something strange out in the darkness near where the Germans were. When they looked out, they saw that the dark night air almost looked kind of blurry or wavy, kind of like if you were looking at air coming off of hot pavement on a sunny day. It would look kind of blurry. That's what the night sky looked like to them. But of course, it couldn't be because of heat and sun, because it's the morning, it's cold, it's dark outside. And so as these Russians are looking out, not sure what to make of this blurry air, they began calling up more Russians to go have a look and figure out what this was. And over the next couple of minutes, as the Russians looked out from behind the walls at this air, they realized what it was. It was this huge grayish-green cloud that was as wide as the fortress was, and the wind was blowing it in their direction. Now,
that's freaky, man. That's freaky. That's some real Scooby-Dooby-Doo type shit right there. Like, I didn't like that one bit. Imagine seeing that. Like, you already in war, and you see this grayish green cloud, like, creeping along towards you, bro. No.
The Russian soldiers had no idea what this was, and so they just kind of stood there watching it in stunned silence. And as they watched, they saw as the cloud would touch any vegetation like leaves on trees or the high grass in the marsh, it would all turn black and shrivel up.
Oh, hell
and then
no.
the soldiers began hearing a soft thump, 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 thump out in the darkness. And it was the sound of birds dying and falling to the ground that were in...
What the hell? Yeah. Oh, the fear seeing that would have went through my body. I think my soul would just detach itself from my body and just take off, like, for real, because the fear of that, seeing birds die, the plants die from this thing that's coming at me, oh Lord.
Side of this cloud. At this point, the Russians began to panic, and they began to run to sound the alarm to get the other soldiers up to prepare for an attack. But as they did, they began to smell this very harsh chemical smell coming into the fortress. And then before long, all the Russians could hear was the sound of their comrades coughing. It would turn out that strange behavior that Vladimir saw 3 days earlier of the German officers huddled together looking at the sky and then looking down at the ground and then back at the sky again, what they were doing was preparing for a chemical attack on Osovich Fortress. On the ground, out of sight of Vladimir, were canisters containing the poisonous gas, and when the officers would look up and put their hands up, they were gauging if the wind was strong enough and in the right direction to launch the attack. Now, 3 days ago, the wind had not been in their favor, but this morning at 4 a.m. on August 6th, 1915, the wind had been in their favor, and they had released the gas. And this gas was quite possibly the worst gas you could ever come up against on the battlefield. It was a combination of chlorine gas and bromine gas. On their own, chlorine and bromine are very toxic and can kill you. But when you mix those two gases, it becomes exponentially more dangerous. The gas mixture binds to moisture and then turns the moisture into hydrochloric acid, meaning if a person who did not have a gas mask on came in contact with this poisonous gas, when they inhaled it, it would literally fill their lungs with acid, which would dissolve them from the inside out.
Whoa.
And then also, the gas would get into their eyes and into their nose, and the acid there would burrow holes into their skull. And once you've come in contact with this gas, there's nothing anybody can do to save you. You're gonna die, except it's gonna take a really, really long time.
Oh,
you don't just immediately dissolve. It's this long, drawn-out, excruciatingly painful process. By this point in World War I, chemical warfare was really not being used by anybody, and so as a result, the Russian army did not outfit their soldiers with gas masks. The German army did, and they knew the Russian army did not. So, as this horrific poisonous gas began permeating every square inch of Osovich Fortress, all of these Russian soldiers had nothing they could do to protect themselves from this gas. And so right away, soldiers began bleeding from their eyes and their mouth.
Nope, there's better ways to go. There is better ways to go. That sounds horrible. That sounds so scary, bro. Just knowing there's nothing you can do and you're just about to go, but it's taking so long for you to go. Like, it's just torture. Like, that's maddening. That is madness.
Mouths and their ears, and they literally began coughing up chunks of their lung. And so very quickly, the Russians inside the fortress understood they were being poisoned. And so the soldiers that were not as affected, at least not right away, by this gas, quickly began ripping off their shirts, dunking them in water, and wrapping them around their heads to try to limit how much they breathed in of this chemical. But it really didn't do much to stop the chemical. In fact, these makeshift gas masks might have made it worse because the gas would have bound to the moisture on the shirt. And so the Russians were totally doomed. They were surrounded on all sides outside the walls by their enemy, and then inside the fortress was this gas, and there was no ventilation in the fortress, and so there was nowhere to go. They couldn't escape death no matter where they went. And so Vladimir, he was one of the guys that was still on his feet inside of the fortress, and he stumbled over to this narrow window on the side of the fortress walls, and he looked out and he saw all these Germans running towards them, firing their machine guns.
Damn.
Artillery's being fired. I mean, he knows they are moments away from the Germans reaching the fortress door, coming inside, and killing every last one of them. But Vladimir's reaction to this was not being scared or being sad. Instead, he suddenly felt incredibly motivated. If they're going to come in here and kill us, then we're going to make it as hard as humanly possible.
I'm taking somebody with me.
Vladimir had a reputation for being totally fearless. Over the past 6 months,
Well, shout
that they
out
had
to
been
you,
under
man.
siege from the German army.
I mean, shit. I met two Vladimirs in my life, and they all been thugs, bro. I feel like if you got that name, Vladimir, like, you just a gangster. Like, you just hard. You built different, bro. Your body is different. You feel me? Vladimir said, nah, fuck all that. Somebody going with me. I'm taking something. I'm leaving with something, okay?
out in their trenches. Anytime fighting broke out, Vladimir was always the first to run up and be right on the front line of fighting. And then several times when his comrades had been shot or wounded, Vladimir would run out into the line of fire to save the fallen soldiers. It was like Vladimir lacked any instinct for self-preservation. And so as the Germans continued their run towards the fortress, artillery shells are hitting the walls, there's constant gunfire, and Vladimir, he leaves his window and he marches back over to the open courtyard inside of this fortress where the 100 or so other still living Russian soldiers were. I mean, they're all gonna die. They've been totally poisoned by this gas, and it's just a matter of time now, but they're still on their feet, and Vladimir walks over to them, and even though, again, he's pretty junior, he stands up and he says to them, "This is our moment. We are all going to die. But what we do right now will define us." And the way Vladimir said it, he got those 100 soldiers who were on death's door to be so motivated so quickly that they rallied to him. And so...
You know how good of a speech that has to be? Like, you just told me we are going to die. Like, you was like, yo, I ain't even gonna sugarcoat it, bro. We done. We're finished here. But hey, take somebody with you. Like, hey, man. Boy, the power of 1,000 slaves would have came upon me. I'll be like, yeah, let's go, bro. Like, fuck it. If we going out, we going out, okay? Shit, I'm taking something with me.
As these men are literally bleeding out of their eyes, their mouths, they're coughing up pieces of their lung, Vladimir explained the plan. And then moments later, with Vladimir in the front, this gaggle of soon-to-die Russian soldiers charged towards the gates, opened the fortress, and began running out towards the Germans, screaming with their bayonets lowered. Now, the Germans on the outside fully expected that this chemical attack would kill all of the Russians, that taking Osovich Fortress would be super routine because when they walked in, everybody would be dead. And so suddenly to have the fortress open and have these men that are covered in bloody rags and they're puking up pieces of their organs and they're stumbling forward like zombies with bayonets out, screaming sight. Like banshees, it scared the living out of the Germans.
That's
in
terrifying.
fact, they were so quickly terrified by what they saw, they literally dropped their guns, turned, and began running back towards their trenches.
Oh, they ain't built like y'all. They wasn't built like that. They wasn't built like that. They were soft. They were soft. They said, you know what? You got it, bro. You won. Like, you got it, bro. I don't even want to fight you, bro. They dropped their guns and got out of there. They said, yeah, nah. I ain't fighting no zombie. I'm good. I ain't come here to fight no damn zombie. They ain't...
And as they did, Vladimir and his dead man army began picking off the Germans one by one. And then after Vladimir and the dead man army ran out of ammunition, they just continued staggering forward directly into the thousands of Germans in front of them and began picking up dead German weapons and firing them. And then when they got up to the trenches, where these retreating Germans had been so scared they had run into their own barbed wire, and so there's all these retreating Germans stuck on the barbed wire, the Russians just began bayoneting all these men that were stuck. And so at some point, as Vladimir is doing this, a German soldier ran up to him and bayoneted Vladimir right in the stomach. He ran him all the way through until the barrel of the gun was right up against his stomach. And Vladimir apparently looked down at this bayonet, knew he had been completely run through, and he looked up at the German who had just stabbed him, who was still holding the gun, and Vladimir spit blood and lung tissue all over this German's face, and then just began screaming directly at this guy. And so the German was so scared, he just dropped the gun, turned, tried to run, and then Vladimir...
Nah, that nigga crazy. No. See? That nigga is crazy. That's a terrifying sight. Imagine that. First of all, you feel me, like, shanking somebody? You feel me, like, poking somebody? Like, that's a personal thing. Like, y'all, that's a very personal thing. You gotta get up close and personal. You feel me? That's a very personal thing. For this man to get, like, that whole bayonet through his whole body and just spit in somebody's face, like, at that point, bro, I would have did the same thing. I've been like, you know what? like, I didn't sign up for this. I did not, I don't even want to be here, bro. Like, you different. Like, you Superman. Like, you different, bro. Like, you got it. You won. You right. I shouldn't have done it. My bad. Like, I didn't know you was built this way. I wasn't familiar with your game. Like, you feel me? Like,
Vladimir was back on his gun with the bayonet still in his stomach, shooting at the Germans. The Germans were so completely caught off guard and terrified by Vladimir's dead man army counterattack that even though they outnumbered the Russians 70-1, they failed to take Osovich fortress. The main reason for that was the Germans who had escaped the counterattack and made it back to their trenches. They told the other German soldiers that the Russians had turned into zombies, literally, that they were undead, and so attacking them was pointless. They're already dead. And the Germans were so scared, they refused to leave their trenches again. Once the Russians could tell they had successfully forced a retreat by the German army, Vladimir, who was still alive at this point with a gun still stuck in his gut from the bayonet, he called out to the rest of his soldiers to retreat back to the fortress. And so this handful of Russian soldiers who were about to die, they hobbled their way back inside of their fortress, and then Vladimir gave his final command: destroy the fortress. If we can't have it, nobody can. Every single Russian soldier that came in contact with that poisonous gas died, including Vladimir. When the Germans did eventually take Osovich fortress at a later date, when again, all of the Russians were dead, when the Germans went inside, they realized the fortress had been destroyed and it was no longer strategically valuable. Vladimir would be awarded posthumously Russia's highest military honor. His actions and the actions of the other dying soldiers that fought alongside him are remembered today in stories, songs, and statues all across Russia.
damn. Yo, they were built different, y'all. Nah, they were built different, y'all. That is a terrifying story. That was crazy. Yeah, nah.
In our
David said, so that's where zombies came from in Call of Duty. Facts, bro. Facts. Like, that is wicked. Like, that is something crazy to think about. That dude, Vladimir, that dude was built different. He was a crazy son of a gun, man. To be able to withstand all that and still be like, nah, like, I'm going out on my shield, that's a real warrior right there. That's a real warrior. God dog. God dog. But we got another one, man. We got MrBallen. This time traveler is a killer and has the receipts. Damn, the receipts.
In our lives, all of us have to make really difficult decisions from time to time. Sometimes we make the right call, and other times we don't. Today's story is about someone who did the latter, but really, the story is about what this person did to try to fix their bad decision. Simply put, this story takes a totally unexpected turn, and unless you've heard it before, there's no way you're gonna see it coming. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please move all of the strike plates in the like button's door frames slightly lower so that anytime they try to close the door, they won't latch. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On a cold day in January of 2017, a 26-year-old man named William Hargrove paced anxiously back and forth inside of his tiny bedroom. Will was nervous because he was about to take the biggest chance of his life. He was about to ask a woman, who he had only known for a few weeks, if she would marry him. Will looked around his bedroom and he saw there was dirty clothes coming out of his hamper and there was fast food trash all over the ground, and so he knew this was not the ideal location to ask someone to marry him, but he also knew he was running out of time. The woman he wanted to propose to, who was sitting right behind him on his bed, was about to head back to Russia where she lived in just a few hours. And so Will finally stopped pacing. He turned to face this woman on the bed who was just sitting there silently. And Will was about to say something, but then he chickened out and just kept on pacing. To that point, Will's life had been pretty boring and lonely. He worked a low-paying job as a mechanic, and he lived in this bedroom. This was his apartment, this one room, which was being rented to him by a married couple who owned the house it was in. And this house was in a small city in the US state of Oregon. Will didn't really have any friends, and he didn't really have any meaningful hobbies. All he really had was his intense love of science fiction and fantasy. He would lose himself for hours watching movies about outer space and strange, distant alien planets and magic. And then often, after he would watch these movies, he would walk into the forest near his house, and he would just kind of wander around daydreaming about these movies, and he would pretend he was the hero from these movies. And suddenly in his mind, Will would become a sorcerer with great powers, or a brilliant scientist who went back in time to save the world. But as much as Will loved daydreaming and fantasizing, what he really wanted was a wife and kids. And so recently, he had joined an international dating website, and it was through that website that he connected with 26-year-old Anna Repkina from Russia, who was the woman sitting on the bed behind him. And now, if Will could just muster the courage to pop the question to her, he was confident she would say yes, and he could finally start his real life with Anna. Anna, who had blonde hair and striking blue eyes, was a bit of a dreamer like Will. For example, she fundamentally believed that there was a soulmate somewhere in the world for everyone. However, to that point in her life, she had not found her soulmate. Instead, she had been through one bad breakup after another. But a few weeks earlier, when a short, stocky, bald guy with a bushy goatee, Will, had reached out to her on an international dating website and invited her to America to visit him, she believed it was fate that they were being brought together, and so Will had to be her soulmate. Will finally stopped pacing and turned again to face Anna, who was now reading a book on the edge of the bed. And Will, who was terrified at this point, took a deep breath and then reached into his pocket and pulled out a jewelry box. Inside of it was a beautiful emerald ring that was situated on a white gold band. And so Will took a step towards Anna, he dropped down to a knee, and he held out the jewelry box and he opened it up. At first, Anna didn't know what Will was doing and was kind of confused, but when she saw the ring and saw him on his knee, she knew what was happening, and she began trembling with excitement. And then Will, he pulled the ring out of its holder and he slipped it onto Anna's finger, and he asked her if she would marry him. And Anna, she began crying tears of joy and shouted, yes. Later that day, Anna would fly back home to Russia, but as soon as she landed, she began getting her affairs in order to go right back to Oregon to live with Will permanently. And 2 months later, in March of 2017, Anna was touching back down at the Oregon airport, and then right near the baggage claim, she had her big reunion with Will. That evening, when Anna and Will drove from the airport to Will's place, they parked the car, they got out, they grabbed Anna's luggage, they went up the front steps, and when Will unlocked the front door to go inside of the house to make their way up to his bedroom apartment, as soon as the door swung open, there was a woman standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, staring out at both of them. This woman was 34-year-old Michelle Chavez, and she and her husband were the married couple who rented the bedroom apartment to Will. Michelle had dark hair and piercing eyes, and even when she was being pleasant, she could be very intimidating. And right now, it was obvious she was not trying to be pleasant. And so Anna, who sensed something was wrong here, kind of awkwardly said hi to Michelle, but Michelle, she just glared at Anna and said nothing, and then looked from Anna to Will and said, Will, I need to talk to you. And then before Will could say anything, Michelle grabbed his arm and began dragging him through the house to the back. And as Will is kind of stumbling along after Michelle, he tried to be calm and told Anna, just go ahead and take your stuff up to the room. I'll be up there in a minute. And so Anna, she's very confused about what's happening here. She does not understand this dynamic at all, but she began taking her suitcases and marching over to the side of the house where Will's bedroom was. And as she did this, she could hear on the other side of the house, Michelle really yelling at Will, but Anna couldn't make out what Michelle was actually saying. And so at some point, when Anna was now inside of Will's bedroom, just kind of waiting.
See, I'm nosy. I would have been in the hallway like, What's going on in there, man? What's going on? I'm that neighbor. You feel me? I'm nosy. If I hear somebody arguing on the street, I'm listening. All right? Like, I hear somebody arguing in the house, I'm listening. I want to know everything. Like, you ain't gonna keep me in the dark. I'm gonna hear what you got to say.
Will finally did come into the bedroom with his head hung down low, and Anna could just tell that, obviously he's just been yelled at, he looks defeated, and so Anna's trying to make eye contact with him, and finally, Will looks up at Anna, and Anna says, hey, what's going on? Why was she so upset? What's happening here? And in a quiet, trembling voice, Will would tell Anna that Michelle and her husband had just told him that they can't live here anymore. They have to move out. Anna couldn't believe this. She had just flown across the world to be here with Will, and now they don't have a place to live. But she could tell, obviously, Will is really upset about this too. And so instead of just being mad at him, she said, what's going on? Why is she kicking us out? And at first, Will kind of acted like he didn't really know. But then eventually, when Anna kept asking for more information, he would tell her that Michelle sort of had a crush on him. And when she saw Anna moving in with Will, she became really jealous and told them to leave. When Anna brought up the fact that Michelle was married.
Yeah, she got a whole husband. What type of, what?
Married, Will said, I know, she's married, the crush hasn't gone anywhere, but she still feels really jealous. Anna was obviously really upset about the situation, but after Will had explained what's going on with Michelle, Anna wasn't mad at Michelle, she actually felt kind of bad for her. It was sort of pathetic that this married woman was acting the way she was. And so Anna actually figured that really this is probably for the best, that we should get away from Michelle. And within a few days, Anna and Will had moved out of Michelle's place and found a place of their own in a neighboring town. And as soon as they were settled inside of there, it was like relief washed over both of them. And they both became really excited to plan their wedding and think about their future together. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. When I was younger, mental health was not really a topic that got talked about out in the open. It wasn't taboo, but it certainly wasn't as mainstream as it is today. And that's great that it's mainstream. We want society to see that mental health care is a critical part of our overall health. But no matter how mainstream mental health care becomes, I can tell you from my own personal experience with depression that going from hiding your feelings or ignoring your feelings
love arguments when
to
I'm not
actually
in them.
taking action and seeking out help can feel
I'm lying,
impossible.
though. I love
it doesn't
when I'm in
matter
them,
how
too.
many times
toxic.
society
I'm a
and
Scorpio,
family
I'm
and
toxic.
friends tell you that you should take care of your mental health. Ultimately, it will always come down to you and whether or not you feel comfortable and have the courage to seek out help. For what it's worth, after I sought out help for the first time, all that fear and anxiety around the act of getting help was replaced with relief. It felt like I was taking care of myself.
Scorpio gang.
Obviously, help can come in many shapes and sizes, and one size does not fit all. But if you're someone who's struggling right now and you're not taking action to fix that, I would highly encourage you to get therapy through BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a highly reviewed online therapy platform, which means you can get the help you need from the comfort of your own home. Get matched with a BetterHelp therapist after filling out a brief survey, and then it's up to you how you communicate with your therapist, whether that's video call, phone call, text message, or chat. Also, you can switch therapists at any time for free. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/MrBallen. I've also linked them in the description below. Okay, back to the story. A few weeks later, on March 25th, 2017, Anna woke up early and put on her beautiful, simple white wedding dress that she brought from Russia, and then she and Will piled into his car and they headed to the beach. The couple had decided to go with a very simple, intimate outdoor wedding ceremony led by an officiant. An officiant is someone who can legally conduct a wedding. When the couple arrived at the beach, Anna hopped out and immediately began walking over the sand towards the water, and Will stayed back to call the officiant because he didn't see him anywhere. And so when Anna reached the water, she took in the beautiful sights and sounds of the beach. She felt the sun on her face and she listened to the sound of the waves crashing. And it was like suddenly she realized how lucky she was. I mean, this wedding day was turning out to be perfect when over the past couple of weeks, she wasn't sure if it was even going to happen. Even though Anna and Will had left Michelle's house and had no contact with her, over the past couple of weeks, Michelle had become a sort of thorn in their side, sending Anna all these really threatening messages, things like demanding that Anna share Will with her, or else she'll do something awful. And so Anna is thinking that Michelle is going to find a way to sabotage their wedding, but here they were on...
Bro, if you're married and you're in love or have a crush on someone else, you should probably not be married. Like, get a divorce or something, lady. Like, where's your husband? I would have told her that. Like, where's your husband at? Like, why you worried about what we got going on, you weirdo?
The beach, about to get married, with no Michelle in sight. And so at some point, Anna looked along the beach and saw a little bit farther along were the two friends that she and Will had invited to be a part of their wedding. And so Anna ran over to them and she hugged them and began chatting with them. And as she's chatting, she looks up and she sees Will coming down onto the beach and he's on his cell phone. And Anna can't tell what he's saying. He's too far away, but it's obvious there's something wrong. And by the time Will actually got up to the group, he had hung up his phone, but it was very obvious he was really upset. And as soon as he reached the group, he would announce to Anna and their friends that the officiant was not going to be able to make it. And so unfortunately, the wedding was off, at least for now. Now, Anna was totally crushed by this, but she could tell Will also was totally crushed by this. And so instead of crying and making Will feel worse, Anna put on a brave face and told Will, "Don't worry about it. We will find another officiant. We'll reschedule this. It will be fine." And so...
Shout out to that woman. She sounds like a good woman, man. You know? We need more ladies in the world like that. And shout out to all the ladies that are like that. You know, that cater to their man. You feel me? That want to comfort their man.
So Anna and Will's friends, they said bye and they headed their way, and Anna and Will had a very somber walk along the beach back to their car. But on the drive from the beach back to their apartment, they would stop at a fast food restaurant, McDonald's, and they would get some food, and by the time they had made it back to their apartment, they were laughing about how ridiculous it was that they were eating fast food in their wedding clothes. A couple weeks later, Anna was still in the process of rescheduling their wedding, and she was starting to feel very frustrated with Will. Over the last week or so, Will, instead of helping her with the wedding, was spending much of his time outside of the apartment, pacing around, chain smoking, while talking to someone on the phone. Now, Anna didn't know who he was talking to, but based on how stressed out he seemed, Anna assumed he had to be talking to either Michelle or talking to someone else about Michelle. Regardless, Anna knew this had to, in some way, be connected to Michelle. However, whenever Anna would approach Will and ask him why he was so stressed and whether or not he was still in contact with Michelle, Will would try to change the subject, or he would just clam up and not talk at all. But finally, on April 16th, so 3 weeks after the couple's first failed wedding attempt, Will would approach Anna and ask her very sheepishly if she would come with him on a walk through the woods, because he had something important he wanted to tell her. Now, Anna knew that Will loved walking in these woods. He still went off and daydreamed after his movies, and so she knew that if he's asking her to go out there to talk, that this was going to be a very serious conversation, most likely about Michelle.
I don't know, man. If I'm with somebody and I don't give a shit how much you like the woods, man. If you telling me to come with you in a very like skittish way, come walk the woods with me so we can talk. I would be like, bro, why can't we just talk in here? Like, what you got planned? Like, I don't know if you got like a little grave dug for me or what. Like, you gonna hit me with a shovel? I don't know. Like, yeah, I trust you. I love you. Whatever, you know, but that's just out of the blue. The way that he explains it seems kind of off. I don't know. That's kind of sketchy to me. Maybe I got trust issues. Maybe that's why I'm not in a relationship. I don't know, but I'm just saying, kind of sketchy to me, man. That sounds kind of, be careful.
Michelle and whatever's going on. And so the couple piled into Will's car and they drove to the parking lot right near the woods. They got out, they hopped on a path, and they began walking into the trees. And for a while, they didn't really talk to each other. They just walked quietly side by side through the woods. But at some point, Will began to slow down and then finally came to a full stop, at which point Anna stopped too, and she turned to face him. And when she did, Will paused for a moment and then with a shaky voice told Anna that he felt like they rushed into their relationship and he wanted to call off the engagement. Anna was so caught off guard and heartbroken by what she was hearing that she couldn't say anything. She just stood there in stunned silence and then finally just turned around and stormed off away from Will deeper into the woods until she was out of Will's sight. The next day, when Will woke up, the first thing he did was pick up his phone and text Anna. But Anna didn't write back. And so as Will is laying in bed, he couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sense of regret about the decision he had made the day before. He wanted Anna back. So over the course of the next several hours, Will would send Anna a series of increasingly more desperate sounding text messages, pleading with her to just talk to him, please. But she didn't respond to any of his messages. And so Will decided that the only way he could get Anna back would be if he did something big. So he hopped out of his bed, he grabbed his cigarettes, he went outside, and he began pacing and chain smoking, trying to come up with whatever big idea was going to get Anna back. And at some point, an idea came to him. He would do what he had seen heroes do in several of his favorite science fiction and fantasy movies. He would use time travel to go back in time and get Anna back. Feeling totally energized by this idea, Will ran back inside his apartment, he grabbed another pack of cigarettes, a 6-pack of soda, and then he sat down at his computer and he scoured the internet for any information about how to build a time-traveling machine. And for the next 24 to 48 hours, Will stayed at his computer, chain smoking and drinking sodas, drawing all these sketches of different time machine designs that he found on the internet. But at some point, after 24 to 48 hours, Will realized that no matter how good these sketches were, he lacked 1, the resources, and 2, the knowledge and expertise of how to take this sketch and actually make it into a real physical time machine. And so feeling totally frustrated, Will took a sketchbook and threw it, and then lay down on his bed, feeling somewhat defeated. But as he laid there thinking about Anna, he had another epiphany. In other science fiction and fantasy movies, sometimes the heroes didn't need to use time machines to go back in time, they would use magic. And so suddenly Will decided, oh my goodness, I need to find the right magical spell that will allow me to travel back in time and get Anna. And so once again, he ran back to his computer, continued chain smoking and drinking sodas while scouring the internet looking for the right magical spell that would take him back in time. And several times he communicated with strangers on the internet, telling them that he would sell his soul to them if they could give him the right spell. And then anytime he thought he found the right spell, he would close his eyes and chant the words out loud, and then open his eyes only to realize he was stuck in the present. And so finally, after basically staying awake for 72 hours on this quest to go back in time to get Anna back, Will realized that it was not going to work, and so he gave up. The next morning, on April 19th, so this is 3 days after he broke up with Anna in the woods, Will heard a knock on his front door. And when he opened the door, there were 2 police officers standing there. And when Will asked them, what's going on, they told him that they actually needed his help, and would he mind coming to the station to talk to them. And so Will, he was still totally exhausted from not having slept over the last 3 days, but he of course agreed to go. And when he got to the police station, he was led into a small interview room, and he sat down behind this metal desk in front of the other 2 officers, and he asked them, what can I do for you? And one of the officers eventually asked Will if he had recently eaten at a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant. That's a fast food restaurant also known as KFC. Will was puzzled and almost wanted to laugh because he couldn't understand how this was important. But when he saw that these 2 officers were not making light of this at all, they were very serious, Will said, yeah, a few days ago I did eat at a KFC. Why does that matter? To understand why it mattered, we need to understand the relationship between Will and Michelle. It would turn out Michelle did not just have a crush on Will. Michelle and Will had been having an intense affair right in Michelle's house with her husband since
For some reason, I kind of seen that coming. You know, like, I just kind of figured he was piping that down. He was in it, you know, because I was like, there ain't no way that she being this, like, crazy just because she has a crush on. There ain't no way. Like, he's doing something that is making her crazy. And there it was. He was laying it down. He was laying it down.
2015, so a full year before Will met Anna. Now, Will had wanted Michelle to leave her husband and be with him, and Michelle had told Will that she wanted the same thing, but she couldn't do it right now. And so to show Will that she was serious, that one day she would be with him, she gave him her wedding ring, which was an emerald stone sitting on a white gold band. It was like a promise ring, that this is my token to you to show you that one day we will be together in public. But as time went on, Michelle didn't really show any signs of trying to leave her husband, and so Will started to wonder if he was just kind of letting his life slip by. Because remember, Will really wanted a wife and kids, and it was starting to look like Michelle was not going to give him either of those things. And so that was why Will went on that dating site and contacted Anna, and then when he learned that Anna wanted a family too, he had asked her to marry him. The ring that Will gave Anna when he proposed to her was the same ring that Michelle had given Will.
That's crazy.
Her wedding ring, the promise ring.
Crazy.
And so when Michelle saw that ring on Anna's finger on a Facebook post that Anna made about having been proposed to by Will, Michelle was enraged.
Oh yeah,
she snapped. Just a few weeks later, when Anna showed up at Michelle's house to move into Will's bedroom with him, she grabbed Will, dragged him to the side of the house, and said, "You need to choose right now between me and Anna." And because Will couldn't come up with an answer, Michelle kicked him and Anna out of the house. However, over the following weeks, despite Michelle having booted them from her property, she could not let go of her jealousy of Anna and her love for Will. And so she sent Anna all these threatening messages on Facebook demanding that she share Will with her or else, and she began incessantly calling and texting Will demanding that he choose her over Anna. And so when Anna saw Will walking around outside chain-smoking cigarettes on the phone, Anna was right in suspecting that that was Michelle that he was talking to. But despite all this pressure, Will just could not make up his mind. He didn't know which woman he wanted to be with more. And so to buy himself some time, he had lied to Anna about hiring an officiant for their wedding on the beach. And then when they arrived on the beach and Will said the officiant had canceled, it was all a ruse. There was never any officiant. He was just trying to buy time for himself. But finally, on April 16th, for whatever reason, Will had decided that he knew which woman he wanted to go with. He wanted to go with Michelle. So he brought Anna out into the woods and he told her the news, that he was breaking off the engagement and effectively their relationship was over, at which point Anna turned and stormed off into the woods. And so Will, he watched her disappear, and then he turned around and walked back along the path back toward his car. And when he got there, he opened his trunk and got something out of it, and then he walked back along the trail into the woods where he had seen Anna last. And when he reached that spot,
killed her.
He kind of walked off in the direction that Anna had wandered, and eventually he spotted Anna. She was standing in a clearing, looking up into the sky, seemingly lost in thought. And so Will quietly walked up right behind her, and then he raised the shotgun he had gotten out of his trunk. He placed the barrel against the back of Anna's skull, and before she could even react, say something, turn around, do anything, he pulled the trigger. Afterward, he ran back down the trail to his car, and he gathered up all of Anna's things that happened to be inside of the car.
I always ask this, how is that the best option? You just broke up with this girl, and then you took her life. What was the point? Like, how is that the best option? If you love someone else, you're like, well, shit, I gotta kill you now. Like, what? It doesn't make sense to me.
Along with some trash on the floor of the car, and then he brought all of that stuff back into the woods and kind of dumped it both on and around Anna's body. The next day, a walker and their dog happened to come across Anna's body, and when the police were called out to the site, they began sifting through all of the trash that was kind of scattered around Anna's body. And inside of a crumpled up KFC bag, the police would find a receipt for the day of the murder, and that receipt belonged to Will. The morning after Will killed Anna, he sent those initial text messages to Anna just to cover his tracks. But as he sent them, he actually did feel an enormous sense of regret about the decision he made. He no longer wanted Michelle, he wanted Anna. And it was at that point that he decided he would do what the heroes in some of his favorite movies did. He would go back in time and undo the murder and get his love back. But of course, his efforts would fail. And in January of 2020, 3 years after Anna's murder, Will was sentenced to life in prison. As for Michelle, she was never charged with any crime.
Damn, bro.
So that's gonna do it. If you got something out of today's...
Nah, that was a wild story. Like, that was wild, bro. Like, you really... Oh my God, bro. I don't understand people. I don't understand the world that we live in. Like, that is just so crazy, y'all. What? That's what I'm saying. I mean, but hey, man. You know, maybe he had, like, a good personality. Maybe he was goofy or something. I don't know, man. But that shit was crazy, y'all. But we're going to go ahead and end this live here, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody that was just kicking it with me. You guys are awesome. And then I'll just see you guys next time, man.